This is KUOW's Week in Review. KUOW's Week in Review. We're learning from the news of the week with Knute Berger from Crosscut, Seattle Channel's Joni Balter, from Grist, the environmental site, Katie Herzog. And we're going to talk now about this question. If you don't like how Seattle has changed, who should you blame? Two writers tackled that question this week with different results. At the website Gawker, Seattle native Chris Morris-Lent wrote that Seattle is dead and Amazon killed it. Chris, why do you blame Amazon for the Seattle changes you don't like?
Well, it's a confluence of a number of factors. The sheer volume of the employees that Amazon hires, its incredible global ambition, its ruthless workplace culture, and its geographical location in the center of Seattle has attracted a different kind of person than used to come here, to the detriment, I would argue, of almost everybody.
Okay, a different kind of person, and we could talk more about that. You mentioned Amazon's location. You blame Amazon for the worsening traffic, too.
Correct. Obviously, it's not entirely responsible, but having something in the middle of South Lake Union is going to create a different kind of culture than having it in Redmond. South Lake Union is a terrible place, and I read with some amazement one of John's articles where he describes it as a sort of work, live, and play. You sort of have to wonder who is working there, who is living there, who is playing there. It's not really revolutionary. It's just a boom town in the classic sense, and I think having this Disney-fied sort of Williamsburg clone is not beneficial.
Should we blame Amazon or someone else? Let's welcome Seattle Times economics columnist John Talton. John, you just heard Chris blame Amazon for bad culture, high prices, bad traffic, a ruined South Lake Union, Disneyfication. What on that list do you agree and disagree with?
Well, I'm very sorry that Christopher lost his city. I have lost my cities before, and I get that. I think it's a little over the top to say it killed Seattle, considering that Seattle City and the Seattle metropolitan area has one of the most powerful and successful economies in the country right now. Amazon, you can say, is a bad actor in a host of ways, and I've written about this before. But an urban technology campus, if you can get it right, is much more sustainable and much better for the planet than continuing to destroy land out in the suburbs.
Chris Morris-Lent, react to that. We have Amazon, as John Talton said, helping our economy succeed and in the city instead of sprawling out in the suburbs.
Sure. Well, I don't think that the economy needs any help in succeeding. I mean, when the economy has never really struggled, I would argue that things are harder economically for the average citizen in Seattle as a result of Amazon.
Well, I do want to set some context. Seattle has had bad times. Seattle faced the great Boeing slump when they didn't build the SST. I was here when WAMU went down, and downtown was in deep, deep trouble.
That's Washington Mutual for you newcomers.
Seattle has always been the commercial center of the Northwest. It has always been a city on the make. But I would rather be here than Dayton, Ohio. Dayton, Ohio is pretty close to dead. They would like to have an Amazon, but they don't get it.
So, John Talton, you've said that if you don't like a lack of transit and a lack of a park in South Lake Union, you ought to blame voters. You ought to blame us instead of Amazon.
Well, I don't know who the us is, but the fact is that voters, in the classic Seattle way, turn these things down, and they, in their minds, had what they thought were good reasons, that it was going to be a handout to Paul Allen. Well, we sure stuck it to the man. He got South Lake Union anyway. We didn't get a park. And one of the reasons for turning down the subway was, well, it'll only cause Seattle to grow. Well, Seattle grew anyway, and yet we have largely a 1971 transportation system.
So, Chris Morris-Lent, your premise was Amazon killed Seattle. But what about the idea that people are what make a city what it is for good or bad?
Right, but the companies attract a certain kind of person, and you can't say that the company is completely irresponsible for it. With the political leanings of Amazon people, libertarians, the chances of funding more public works that will benefit the polity as a whole is becoming increasingly unlikely, and I sort of worry that we're getting into a self-perpetuation loop.
Well, look, I've beaten up Bezos for years about his flaunting of the common good, but I would argue, and you would disagree, and we're never going to settle this, that Redmond with Microsoft is an abortion,
Yes.
and it never should have been there. Whereas what Bezos has started is an imperfect urban technology campus where you have creative friction. You got a lot more down there than just Amazon. You got biotech, you've got the University of Washington, you've got startups. You have the potential to learn how to bring these things back efficiently to a center city, as opposed to having these planet-killing suburbs.
So there you go. One writer blames Amazon for killing his idea of the way Seattle ought to be. The other writer, first of all, credits Amazon. What's to blame? We're having boom times, and that's a good thing. And by the way, a lot of the stuff you don't like, maybe you should blame the voters. And we're with Joni Balter, Katie Herzog, Knute Berger. Joni, who do you blame, since we're being negative for a few minutes, who do you blame for the Seattle you don't like?
Well, I'll get to that in 1 second here. I thought this article was pretty silly by a guy who seemed to be having trouble getting a date. What I mean by that is he was lamenting the tall women, the short guys. So I don't know. It was hard to take it very, very seriously after that. There is a boom and bust going here. The growth is going way too quickly to keep up with the infrastructure. I did a piece for Channel 9 on that. I used to sort of feel like the writer did towards some of the Amazonians. They were always on their phone as they were walking, bumping into things and all of that. But after I read that New York Times piece about how they're so mean to these employees, I kind of wanted to give them a hug, and I wasn't blaming them exactly, because it's Amazon, it's a lot of other companies that are coming here, and it's market forces that are much larger than Amazon by itself.
We're going to go to a mossback in a moment. I like getting the point of view of a newbie. What don't you like about Seattle, and who do you blame, Katie Herzog?
Amazon, of course. No, I agree with Joni that the article on Gawker was a little bit silly. This guy I think he's 25 years old and is very nostalgic for his childhood, it sounds like. And I'm sorry that he can't get dates. It's hard. But the reality is that the reason I think that people hate Amazon is because there's this perception that Amazon is increasing the cost of housing. But the reality is that Amazon doesn't have anything to do with the cost of housing. It's developers, landlords, the city, the legislature who control the cost of housing, and the free market. You know what Amazon is doing, and I hate to defend Amazon, and I personally don't shop there except when I need emergency earthquake bags. But Amazon, what they're doing is paying their employees a living wage. And, I really wish that I made $160,000 a year, just like, people who work at Amazon. So, yes, I do think that it changes the culture of the city. But, the blame, I don't think Amazon is working within a system that benefits it, that works for it. So the problem is the system. The problem is that we don't have rent control, that we don't have, affordable housing. And that's not actually Amazon's fault for paying their workers well.
Katie says blame the system. Knute Berger, who are we blaming?
I blame myself.
There you go.
I've talked about the rain. I've suggested that Seattle get rid of its name and go back to doo-womps. I think that would help,
You've done everything you can.
I've done everything I can. I actually agree with both of them. I thought John Talton's column was good. Seattle isn't dead, obviously. And you can make any argument that the Seattle you grew up in is dead. Yeah, I get that. No, the city is alive. But I think that one of the things that I hate in these arguments is getting drawn into this false choice between boom and bust. This false choice which says, well, we have Amazon, but what do you want?
Any city would love to have this
Would you like to be? What about Detroit?
Right.
What about Dayton? That isn't the choice. I mean, it is possible, I think, to create something that's a middle ground. That's something where you have vitality, but you also have livability. You also have a way of doing this gracefully, doing this humanely. And I think we often err way too far on the side of helping people who don't need help.
Knute, that clock tells you we have 30 seconds. So in one word, what city has done it right then? What city has said no to growth?
Well, Portland has done a better job of managing growth.
Portland! did it again. Knute Berger, the Mossback from Crosscut, Katie Herzog from Grist, Joni Balter, Seattle Channel. We've been discussing the week in review. The show produced by Hannah Byrne this time around. I'm Bill Radke. Thank you, everybody, for coming in and talking with us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're at KUOW.